I'm home. Huh? It's gone? The jewelry and photos that were here are gone too. If it's your stuff, I decluttered it for you. I wonder if it still counts as decluttering if I threw it all away. Were those trash bags at the garbage area filled with my belongings? That's right. Why would you do something like this? You're just a nuisance to Dad. I bet he finds it annoying to be around you. Stop leeching off him anymore. Leeching? Well, isn't that what it is? You don't earn much, and Dad has been taking care of everything, right? He's even paying for my tuition. That's... She seems to be under some misunderstanding. However, unable to reveal the real reason, I swallowed the words that almost came out. See, you can't even say anything. That's not it, You don't need to strain yourself making excuses. My stepdaughter left the bathroom with a laugh that sounded almost witch-like. Left alone, I kept questioning myself whether I should have told the truth. But suddenly, I snapped to attention. I needed to recover my belongings from the garbage area. I began shuttling back and forth between my apartment and the trash disposal. On about the third trip, I ran into my husband at the garbage area. Given the harsh treatment I had received from his daughter, seeing him made me break down in tears. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. That's too bad. It must be hard for you to be here. Let's get your move out of the way first before we discuss divorce. Starting the next day, I packed my belongings stuffed in trash bags into boxes while sorting through them. As I packed, memories of our life together came flooding back. I packed my clothes into boxes with tears in my eyes. When the packing was done, I left the house as if fleeing. The place I moved to is a high-rise luxury apartment with a rent exceeding $3,000 a month. It's an extravagance for one person. However, I have been paying for my stepdaughter's tuition. With some reasons involved, including living expenses and other costs, I think I've spent around $300,000. Moreover, my husband's daughter is about to start college. I had planned to cover all her tuition as well. Considering the payment, I probably would end up spending another $100,000. That adds up to $400,000. A tremendous amount of money. But now that I'll be living alone, I won't need to spend that much. In despair, I moved into the expensive apartment, leaving behind all the problems with my husband and a daughter, living selfishly without thinking about anything else. This was the only way I could preserve my sanity. 2 weeks after moving into the apartment, I unexpectedly received a call from my stepdaughter. Bracing myself for pain, I answered the phone, but she told me something I hadn't anticipated. The conversation made me so angry that I nearly crushed my smartphone in my hand. I'm Yvonne. And I'm 42 years old, working in a real estate company. I find great satisfaction in helping people start their new lives. There's also an incentive system, and depending on how hard I work, my income can increase. I consider my current job to be my calling, although it can be difficult and susceptible to changes in the economy and times. But it's also a consideration that the work is challenging and enjoyable. I'm embarrassed to admit that until I started dating my husband David at the age of 35, I had no romantic experiences. We met at the pub he runs. The usual for you? Yes, please. I was a regular at his place. David knew what time I'd come in and always had the kimchi platter and omelette I'd order ready. As a result, the appetizer and the dishes I ordered would arrive almost immediately. He also knew I liked my first beer served not with the appetizer but with the meal, without me having to say it. I savored the beer noisily. The extra cold beer, made even tastier with David's thoughtfulness, felt enhanced. While I looked forward to the food, I actually also looked forward to seeing and talking to him. He's 5 years older than me but looks youthful. Above all, I was drawn to how happily he worked. David was also interested in me, and we started dating. Having a first boyfriend at 35 was a big hurdle. I didn't know how to be in a relationship and would act like a shy middle school girl around him, which now makes for a sweet memory. Another big challenge in dating him was, will she get along with me, I wonder? She's not shy and is a good kid, so it'll be fine. Oh. I sound like I'm bragging about my own child, don't I? David laughed, but I couldn't laugh because I was too nervous and anxious. David had been divorced and had a daughter named Samantha. Meeting his daughter for the first time when she was 8 was daunting, as it's a tricky age. My heart was pounding so hard it seemed to be about to burst. Hi Samantha, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm Samantha. David's daughter greeted me with a bow, like a businessperson, and spoke with polite, well-measured words. Her greeting was so mature, it was hard to believe she was only 8. This only increased my nervousness. However, that tension vanished within an hour. Food court's this way. Don't pull so hard. Hey, Samantha. What if you trip while rushing like that? Sorry. David's daughter looked downcast after being scolded by him. Watching her expression, I felt sorry for her but also found her adorable. She quickly warmed up to me, holding my hand and even hugging me. Also, she apologized immediately when scolded by David. Just as he said, she was not shy and a very good kid. I started wondering why David had divorced his first wife when he was such a good father. Why did you and your first wife split up? Huh? Oh, sorry. You don't have to answer that. Startled by my abrupt question, he paused while eating his ice cream. It was a rookie mistake from someone with no dating experience. Such sensitive topics should be approached with care. I tried to pretend I hadn't asked, but David resumed eating his ice cream and answered my question. We had disagreements about how to educate Samantha. It led to frequent arguments. We decided it wasn't good for her to see her parents fighting all the time. Samantha is now a very good and honest girl, so it looks like you were right about her upbringing. Who knows? She's only 8 now, and there's still adolescence and all sorts of things ahead. Who knows what will happen? Seeing David sincerely considering his daughter's future, I clearly envisioned marrying him and living together as a family. Can I ask something? You work in real estate, right? How's that going? I've been working a lot, so I guess the income is decent. Not that, I mean like your hours and how busy you are. You know, considering Samantha and all. Oh, right, of course, you meant that. Flustered by my blunder due to my lack of romantic experience, I grabbed my coffee cup again to hide my face. David laughed at this. Both my embarrassment and the coffee made my face turn red. 2 years into our relationship. After David's daughter Samantha and I had built a strong bond, he and I decided to get married. After the wedding, I moved into the condo where David and his daughter lived, and we started our life as a family of 3. David was a kind and considerate husband, and Samantha treated me like her real mother. I was living a happy life. However, this seemingly perfect life was not without its challenges. 6 years into our marriage, Samantha became a high school student. Until then, she had been attending a private elementary to middle school, but she switched to a public high school. David had hoped she would continue in private education, but we had to abandon that plan for specific reasons. It's really tough to keep going like this. I'm sorry. If only I could earn more. What are you talking about? It's clearly my fault, the pub's been doing poorly. Just before Samantha decided on her school path, we were having somber family meetings every night, just the 2 of us. David looked as if he was returning from a funeral. And I probably had a similar expression. His pub had been thriving, but due to the touch economical times, its financial situation worsened. When business was good, he even opened a second location, but that has since closed. Sales at the original pub continued to decline slowly. The situation wasn't critical yet, but thinking about the future made us incredibly anxious. There was a school I wanted her to attend, but we'll have to settle for public since we can't afford private anymore. She wanted to go to that private school, didn't she? More like she preferred private, but she also said she wasn't particularly attached to it. Really? She said that? Maybe public will be okay then. It's unfortunate, but if she feels comfortable, then let's go with public. I'll talk to her, it'll be okay. Instead, we'll make sure she can go to the college she wants. I felt a pang of guilt for relying on Samantha's words to make such a decision, gripping my coffee cup tightly. David looked gloomier than usual. After a long silence, his expression suddenly became resolute, as if he had made up his mind, and he asked me for a favor. There's a chance I won't be able to keep the pub going. It's hard to say this, but I want to use all the income from the pub for the business. That's fine by me. I think we can manage just living on my income alone. If Samantha goes to public school, we should be able to handle the tuition costs. Thanks. Also, I want to keep this between us and not tell Samantha. Not telling her you're not bringing money home? Yeah. If she knows the pub is doing poorly, she'll worry. And, it doesn't look good as a father. After a series of deep and serious discussions about our daughter's high school choices and the state of his pub, he suddenly brought up a seemingly minor issue, which unexpectedly made me chuckle through my nose. David likely wanted to maintain his dignity as a father. Compared to our other problems, my husband's request is minor, so instead of discussing it at length, it's better to quickly accept it and spend our time solving other, more significant issues. Understood. I won't mention it to Samantha. But once the pub starts doing well again and you can contribute financially to our household, I'll tell her the truth. My words seemed to bring a bit of light back to David's somber expression. The day after our private family meeting, David talked with Samantha and convinced her to attend a public high school. He didn't cite the pub's troubles as a reason, instead suggesting that since she had been so focused on academics in private school, it was time for her to have a bit more freedom and enjoy being a student. While we still had our challenges, Samantha successfully transitioned to high school. I initially worried she might be upset about not attending her preferred private school, but she seemed to enjoy her high school life as David had hoped. She made new friends and started going out more. I watched with a smile as my daughter enjoyed a typical high school life. However, David seemed less pleased with Samantha's current situation. Were you out again? What if your grades drop because of all this hanging out? I'm sorry, I'll study too. From now on, come straight home after school. Okay. Samantha obediently listened to my husband, her shoulders drooping as she cast her gaze to the floor and walked to her room. It's good that she listens to my husband, but this feels a bit off to me. Isn't that a bit harsh? Didn't you want her to enjoy school? She's just keeping the promise you made. Aren't you being a bit contradictory? Studying is still important, isn't it? Are you saying it's okay if her grades drop? That's not what I'm saying. When my husband gave me a glaring look, I instinctively averted my eyes. He seemed confident in his viewpoint. Although something didn't feel quite right, I couldn't say he was completely wrong. Since I wasn't completely confident in my own opinion, I decided to go along with my husband's thinking for the time being. A few days later, perhaps influenced by my words, David made a suggestion to Samantha. Samantha, you're in high school now, so you could start working part-time, right? How about at the pub? Gaining work experience is important, and having a job is part of high school life, isn't it? Yeah, I'll try it. A brighter expression returned to Samantha's face, which had been downcast after being scolded about her studies. She was excited about the new experience. I supported the idea of her working part-time. As David said, gaining work experience was beneficial, and the extra money would be helpful for her social life. Since high school students also socialize with friends, it's probably better for her to have more allowance. Once Samantha started working at the pub, she seemed more vibrant and genuinely enjoyed her high school years. But when she became a high school senior, our situation changed abruptly. Dinner's ready. I'll eat after you're done. Just leave it. It'll get cold, won't it? I'll warm it up myself, just leave me alone. But I want us to eat together. Are you in the middle of studying? Should I wait? Geez, so annoying. I don't want to eat with you, just leave me alone. Read between the lines. This is why I can't stand old ladies. I was shocked into silence by her words. As I stood there unable to say anything, she gave me a dismissive look before heading to her room. The once sweet and obedient girl had suddenly changed, now spewing venom at me with intensity. The hardest part recently was hearing her say, "Don't act like a mom." It felt like a long screw was being driven into my heart with an impact driver. It wasn't a gradual change, nor had I done anything specific to anger her. One day, it was as if she had woken up a different person. I became seriously worried that she might be possessed by some evil spirit. However, it didn't seem like she was influenced by any evil force. "Dad, I got my college acceptance letter." "That's great. Well done." She flaunted the acceptance letter to David as if she was showing off a victory document to media cameras, her face a mix of joy and smugness. While she had become hostile toward me, she continued to treat him as she always had. If she were possessed by an evil spirit, I assumed she would be venomous toward him too. In a moment meant for celebration, I felt like an outsider. Yet, as he praised her, she became increasingly smug. Seeing her in a good mood now, I thought I might be able to rejoin the inner circle. "Congratulations! Now you're off to college." Damn it. The atmosphere of joy vanished in an instant with her click of the tongue. Don't dampen the mood when I'm celebrating with Dad. You really can't read the air, can you? She glared at me as if I were her enemy, muttered something venomous, and retreated to her room. Since she started treating me coldly, my mental state has been in shambles. And being excluded from the celebration of her college acceptance pushed my mental state to its breaking point. Have I done something wrong to Samantha? I thought it was just the stress of high school preparation, but since it hasn't changed even after her acceptance, it seems that wasn't it. She's normal with me. Are you sure there's absolutely nothing you can think of? There's nothing. She just changed suddenly one day. I don't think that's possible. Reflect carefully on what you've done. There must be something. Otherwise, she wouldn't be acting this way toward you, right? Yeah. Maybe I did do something wrong somewhere. I felt gloomy as I reflected on things I didn't even remember doing. As my husband said, maybe I had done something terrible to her without realizing it. However, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't recall such an incident. Believing I couldn't resolve this alone, I decided to confront her, prepared for whatever might hurt. Have I done something to upset you? Can you tell me if there's something bothering you? Annoying. Samantha muttered curtly and tried to walk away. Her brief response pierced my heart, but today I was determined not to back down. I followed her as she headed to her room, insisting on a resolution. If I've done something wrong, I'll apologize and fix it. Just tell me what it is. Stop it. Don't follow me. Just leave this house now. She suddenly turned and pushed me as she reached her room. I lost my balance and fell against the hallway wall, ending up sitting on the floor. The pain from hitting the wall and the floor made it impossible for me to stand immediately, so I sat there, looking up at her. Samantha seemed momentarily concerned by her own excessive reaction. But the next moment, she surely glared at me and then slammed her room door shut with a loud bang. The sound of her closing the door felt like a signal that my mental state had broken past its limit. I can't take this anymore. That's right. With Samantha in that state, it's unfortunate, but it seems difficult for you and her to continue living together. I'm ready whenever you are. My husband quickly accepted my thoughts. It seems that if I say, I want a divorce, he's ready to end it at any time. While it was a relief not to need a long discussion, his easy acceptance felt somewhat sad. The next evening. As I returned from work, my steps were heavy. When I reached the front of our apartment building, the weight on my legs made me stop. Absent-mindedly, I looked around. There's trash overflowing at the garbage disposal area. Even though our building allows 24-hour trash disposal, Isn't it a breach of manners to overflow it during the night? Maybe someone suddenly decided to move out? As I allowed myself a moment of escapism staring at the trash, I then forced my heavy legs to move again. I'm home. As I opened the front door, something felt off. But I couldn't pinpoint what it was, so I dismissed it as my imagination and headed towards the living room. Entering the living room, it became clear it wasn't just my imagination. Huh? It's gone? The jewelry and photos that were here are gone too. At first, I thought a burglar had taken my things, but then I realized that only my belongings were missing from the living room. Not just there, but in the kitchen, only my dishes were gone. In the bathroom, my toothbrush and cosmetics had disappeared. As I stood dazed in the bathroom, trying to make sense of the situation, Samantha came in, smirking. If it's your stuff, I decluttered it for you. I wonder if it still counts as decluttering if I threw it all away. Hearing her words, the image of the trash area I had just seen flashed vividly in my mind. Were those trash bags at the garbage area filled with my belongings? That's right. Why would you do something like this? You're just a nuisance to Dad. I bet he finds it annoying to be around you. Stop leeching off him anymore. Leeching? Well, isn't that what it is? You don't earn much, and Dad has been taking care of everything, right? He's even paying for my tuition. She seems to be under some misunderstanding. Perhaps, when she was applying for high school, my husband told her a lie. Originally, there was a plan to lie, but I believe he told a different lie than what we had agreed upon in our discussions. I thought about telling her the truth, but there might have been a reason why my husband changed the content of the lie. Nonetheless, I had made a promise not to say anything to her. I swallowed the words that almost came out. See, you can't even say anything. That's not it, You don't need to strain yourself making excuses. She left the bathroom with a laugh that sounded almost witch-like. Left alone, I kept questioning myself whether I should have told the truth. But suddenly, I snapped to attention. I needed to recover my belongings from the garbage area. I began shuttling back and forth between my apartment and the trash disposal. On about the third trip, I ran into my husband at the garbage area. My husband caught me entering the apartment with trash bags in both hands. I was overwhelmed with a mix of embarrassment and sadness, which brought me to tears. I'm sorry. I tried too hard to maintain my dignity as a father and exaggerated too much. I'm gonna tell Samantha the truth right now. When we got home, he quickly explained why he had lied and apologized. He then went to Samantha's room, where she had secluded herself, to sort things out. While they were talking, feeling powerless, I blanked out and just waited for him to return. About 30 minutes later, he came back. She understands that the lies about the finances were mine, but apparently, that's not the only reason she's been cold towards you. What other reasons are there? She didn't tell me. Reaching my limits, I gave up trying to understand. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. That's too bad. It must be hard for you to be here. Let's get you move out of the way first, before we discuss divorce. That's what I'll do. Is the pub okay? Can you make sure Samantha goes to college even if I'm not here? Don't worry about her, everything will be fine. Starting the next day, I packed my belongings stuffed in trash bags into boxes while sorting through them. As I packed, memories of our life together came flooding back. I packed my clothes into boxes with tears in my eyes. When the packing was done, I left the house as if fleeing. The place I moved to is a high-rise luxury apartment with a rent exceeding $3,000 a month. A lavish expense for one person. However, I have been paying for Samantha's tuition. Her elementary and middle schools were private and expensive. David and I used to pay together, but since high school, I have covered all the costs. Additionally, his pub was doing poorly, and he couldn't contribute financially. This situation hadn't changed for nearly 3 years, and I covered all living expenses. I've made various payments even before this, so I think I've spent around $300,000 in total. Samantha is about to start college. I had planned to cover all her tuition as well. Considering other payments, I probably would end up spending another $100,000. That adds up to $400,000. A tremendous amount of money. But now that I'll be living alone, I won't need to spend that much. In despair, I moved into the expensive apartment, leaving behind all the problems with my husband and daughter, living selfishly without thinking about anything else. This was the only way I could preserve my sanity. 2 weeks after moving, my feelings have somewhat settled. The chaos of moving has delayed any divorce discussions. It's about time to start talking about divorce. As I looked at the calendar to see when I might be free, I suddenly remembered something and felt a rush of panic. That's right. I need to pay Samantha's tuition fee today. I panicked for a moment but then realized. Oh, I don't have to pay anything anymore. Thoughts of my family, which I had tried not to dwell on, saddened me. Photos of my family that I couldn't bring myself to delete were still on my smartphone. As I debated whether to look at them, my phone suddenly rang. Samantha's name appeared on the caller ID. Hesitantly, I answered the phone.
Mom, help me!
What's wrong? Bracing myself for pain, I answered the phone, but she told me something I hadn't anticipated. The conversation made me so angry that I nearly crushed my smartphone in my hand. That night, I returned home and waited with my daughter for my husband's return. What? Why are you here? Is this about the divorce? My husband, unaware that I knew the truth, seemed clueless about the situation and was laughing it off. His mocking demeanor only fueled my anger. There's the matter of divorce, but first, we need to talk about Samantha's college. College? Oh, did she tell you? Yes. What do you mean by making her take a gap year? The tuition payment was due today, right? You said not to worry because she was going to college, didn't you? Upon further thought, it turns out it's just not possible right now. So, I've decided she should take a gap year. Eventually, I will definitely send her to college, don't worry. What do you mean eventually? Is that why after nearly 3 years the pub situation hasn't improved? Because you plan everything on such rough estimates? You might not understand, but with a business, decline happens quickly but growth takes time. If she wants to go to college soon, it would help if she worked hard to boost the pub. That way, the pub stabilizes, and she can go to college. It all works out, right? Samantha, you agree to take a gap year and work at the pub, right? David looked at Samantha, who nodded meekly, her expression frightened. Samantha agrees. This isn't something for you to interfere with, especially since you're talking about divorce. My fists clenched in anger as I listened to him. It wasn't just about him deciding to have Samantha take a gap year, it was what he said after. So, Samantha is supposed to help lift the pub during her gap year, working there? Exactly. It's not like she can just study during her gap year, she needs to work a bit too. She won't be able to study if she's working. She'll work, but I won't allow her to slack on her studies. She has a whole year. I want her to get into a better college than the ones she got accepted to this year. You seem to just say whatever you think is right at the moment. Your words lack consistency. What you say changes from one day to the next, typical of someone like you. I'm assessing what's most important at the time. Oh, is that so? Well, that's fine, but what's the reason for making Samantha work without pay? Is that also most important? Did you talk about this? His gaze sharpened, his demeanor becoming more intimidating. It seems his true nature was showing. However, I couldn't back down after hearing everything from my daughter. I heard that the reason you divorced your previous wife was because of your educational policies. You forced Samantha to study, demanded absolute obedience, and wouldn't let her deviate. That was your approach, and your ex-wife thought it was better for Samantha to grow up more freely, right? That's right. She didn't understand anything. Without proper study, How can she score well on tests or get into good schools or companies? I'm telling Samantha to study for her own good, but her mother just played with her and disrupted her studies. And you ended up being violent towards your wife, leading to the divorce, right? You forcibly took Samantha's custody from her, didn't you? Can't believe it. Didn't you ever feel sorry for Samantha? She used to study while crying when she was younger. It was painful for me to see Samantha struggling too, but this is for her own good. Besides, it's natural for children to listen to their parents. So, when I say she needs to study, she has to do it. His face was filled with a self-assured confidence. He truly believes his approach is correct. He is a typical toxic parent. Although Samantha was never physically abused, she was constantly pressured by her father from a young age. As a result, she became unable to defy him and ended up complying with whatever he said. This is a common sign seen in children raised by toxic parents. Before my husband and I got married, when my daughter and I first met, she immediately held my hand and hugged me. It turns out that her father had instructed her to do so to make a good impression on me. At that time, she was only 8 years old. Even then, she was already heavily influenced by her father. Furthermore, when she became a high school student, the reason he told me to hide the fact that I was paying her tuition was likely to ensure she would continue to obey him. He probably thought he would be in trouble if he didn't have a daughter who complied with everything he said. The most unforgivable thing that my husband, a toxic parent, commanded her to do was to act coldly towards me. Did you also command Samantha to be cold towards me? Wow, you know about that too? Yes, I heard it from her. You've been having an affair with a regular at your pub, haven't you? And she earns more than I do, so marrying her could solve her tuition fees and the financial troubles of your pub, right? You orchestrated this whole divorce scenario by making Samantha act cold towards me, so you could switch partners without getting your hands dirty. What kind of person does that? Well, she gets to go to college, so it's all good, right? I arranged a way for her to attend college. She should be thankful. Sure, but that doesn't justify leaving her to close up the pub for free while you go out with your affair partner, does it? Samantha, you really told her everything, huh? Remember this later. As David glared at her, Samantha looked down and made herself small. For her, he must symbolize fear. Seeing her tremble, it's clear I need to resolve this situation soon for her sake. A few days ago, your affair partner found out you were only after her for her money to cover the pub's downturn and Samantha's tuition fees, right? And after she ditched you, you came up with this plan to have Samantha work in the pub and take a gap year, right? It makes sense why she would come to me for help. Samantha's problems are no longer your concern since we're divorcing. Stop interfering. Or, are you trying to get back with me after all this? After hearing all this, there's no way we're not getting a divorce. In that case, shall I just pay the tuition, then? Oh wait, the deadline for the tuition payment was today. It's already evening, too late now. Samantha has no choice but to take a gap year and help out at the pub, as I said. She'll get to college eventually, don't worry. There's no way I can leave her with you. I'll take custody of her. What? You and Samantha aren't even blood related. It's only natural that I keep her. I've been with her since she was in elementary school, she's my daughter too. Then let's ask her. We have to respect her wishes. Samantha, who do you want to live with? Dad, right? As my husband leaned in, pressuring our daughter. She shrunk even smaller and trembled more violently than before. I gently placed my hand on her shaking hand. Her trembling stopped instantly, and she looked up at me. She still seemed a bit frightened, but it looked like she could cover it with courage. Pushing my hand away, Samantha took out her phone, displayed a photo, and placed it on the table. I want to live with Mom. What? My husband seemed surprised by her words, his eyes widening. He then turned his gaze to the table. Displayed on the smartphone screen was a photo of my husband and his affair partner entering a hotel. Samantha had captured the evidence of his infidelity. It's good I delayed discussing our divorce. Samantha will stay with me. And expect to pay a hefty alimony for your infidelity. My husband glared sharply at me in response to my taunt. However, with everything from his treatment of Samantha to his affair now out in the open, he had no ground to retaliate. In a last-ditch effort, he blurted out. The deadline for the college tuition payment is today. She can't enroll now. That's taken care of. Samantha called me in the afternoon, and I managed to speak with the college just in time. What? Spoke to them? They agreed to accept a late payment. We have 3 days to pay. What? My husband was dumbstruck, his schemes deftly bypassed, and he seemed to lose all will to fight. His mouth hung open, and he was rendered speechless. As usual, the deadline to pay the enrollment fee means forfeiting the right to enroll if not paid on time. However, some schools may allow a short delay in payment if you discuss it with them. I called the school and explained that due to the divorce and moving, things had been hectic, so I asked if they could wait a few days for the payment. This excuse wasn't a lie. I'll go pay the enrollment fee tomorrow. Imagining what was about to happen to him, my husband seemed to despair and froze, unable to move. No longer needing anything from my immobile husband, I decided to take my daughter back to our newly moved into luxury apartment. After that, my husband and I divorced. I gained custody of Samantha. Although my ex-husband resisted handing over our daughter, Samantha's choice to live with me, along with his low income and his infidelity, made it straightforward for me to take her. I was relieved not to lose my precious daughter to him. Samantha had been harsh to me, but it was because he had ordered her to act that way. Each time she was cruel to me, she was in pain, sometimes crying in the bath or before sleeping. Moreover, being under the control of a toxic parent, she couldn't defy her father's commands. She was a victim too. Therefore, I decided to view her actions towards me as if they were directly done by him. Some time after the divorce, my ex-husband's pub closed down. It seems that its management was already on the brink, and recovery was deemed impossible. Considering he had been in a situation where he depended on others' money, it's impressive it lasted as long. Now, he works in a restaurant while repaying the substantial debt incurred from the closure. Having been a business owner for a long time, he struggles with taking orders from others, shredding his pride. However, these concerns of him are essentially a luxury. Considering he is nearly 50, it's fortunate that he was able to find a job so smoothly. He needs to keep working diligently to pay off his debt, my alimony, and Samantha's child support. By the time all these payments are completed, my ex-husband will likely be approaching an age considered to be elderly. And by that time, after making these payments, I believe he will have little money left at hand. Neither my daughter nor I intend to help him then, he must manage on his own. I calmed down and terminated the lease on the luxury apartment. And I moved to a more suitable apartment for living with my daughter. Since I had just moved in and had to move again, there was a penalty fee, but considering I will be living with my daughter from now on, spending a few $1,000s doesn't seem like a big deal. My daughter is about to become a college student. I plan to fully enjoy parenting for just a little while longer. This is today's dinner. Pizza and hamburgers are good, right? Huh? What's this? Frozen food again? We've been having frozen food a lot lately. Don't you think it's disrespectful to a man who's been working all day? I'm sorry. I'm just nearing my due date and it's really tough. Enough already. You really don't lift a finger, do you? Must be nice living like that. True, lately, because of my late pregnancy, we've had a lot of frozen meals, but why do I alone have to struggle and push through when my husband doesn't help at all, not just with meals but with chores too? He's still mad. I thought to myself, trying to smoothly change the topic. Hey, I forgot to get the mail from the mailbox. Can you grab it for me? I didn't want to upset him more with the frozen food issue, so I reluctantly got up and headed for the front door. And then, in the next moment, I heard the distinct click of the front door locking behind me.
Hey, what's the big ideal?
You take people for granted too much. If you love frozen foods so much, why don't you freeze outside? I didn't have my phone with me. How could I spend all night outside in below freezing temperatures? As I started to panic, a man approached from behind. When I explained my situation to him, I'm a 31-year-old stay-at-home wife. My husband and I got married 3 years ago, and we're still just the two of us living together. My husband, who works at a small business, and I, a stay-at-home wife, weren't exactly rolling in dough. However, we were content with our current lifestyle. Above all, we were overjoyed when we had a baby last month. Every day was a blessing. I'm home. I picked up some deli food from the supermarket today. Thanks. I'm sorry for being such a handful with my morning sickness. It's okay. I'm gonna hop in the shower now. Being pregnant was a first-time experience for me, and everything felt new. I had heard from friends who had been pregnant about the struggles of morning sickness, but mine was much worse than the usual. Not only household chores, but even getting up to go to the bathroom was a struggle when I was lying on the couch. However, my husband was understanding and supported me like a true gentleman. This made me believe that I could get through this tough phase. Many of my friends had husbands who weren't as understanding during pregnancy. Knowing I didn't have that problem was a relief. However, we have my parents' 30th birthday anniversary tomorrow, so we're going to my family's place. I'm sorry, can I maybe skip it? It's just, the 3-hour drive one way might be too much for me right now. I've always been there for you. The least you can do is listen to me once in a while. It's pretty thoughtless of you to consider missing my parents' big day. It's true that I've always been grateful for his parents. I would love to attend if I could. When we announced our pregnancy, they came to celebrate, and even helped with some wedding costs. They've always been kind to us. But, even considering how much I appreciate them, my morning sickness was just too intense to think about attending their 60th celebration. I believe my husband understands that I'm suffering from morning sickness, but he can't truly feel what it's like. So, it seems like he really wants me to attend no matter what. We can visit them another day. Would that be okay? I think your mother-in-law would understand. We're always indebted to my folks. It's plain rude not to go. Plus, I already told them you're fine and gonna come, so don't look too sick in front of them. I get where he's coming from, but he could be a little more considerate about my situation. Stress is the worst enemy during pregnancy. And his parents' place is a 3-hour drive away from here. We'd leave early in the morning and probably return late at night. But if he's already told them we're coming, it's hard for me to back out. And I didn't want to argue further and worsen his mood, so I reluctantly agreed. Thankfully, I had medication to lessen my morning sickness, and I decided to take it before we left the next day. As expected, I felt terrible in the morning, but thanks to the meds, I felt a bit better. I thought, maybe I can get through just this one day. So, we headed to his parents' place. Their house was out in the countryside, and as we got closer, the roads got worse. The bumpy ride made me feel even sicker, and just the thought of taking the same route back home weighed on my mind. But I tried to compose myself before we arrived. The roads were busy being the weekend, and it took about 3.5 hours. But when I finally arrived at his parents' place, I took a few deep breaths to compose myself before entering. It's been a while. Thank you so much for coming. I told James it would be okay if he came by himself, knowing you weren't feeling well. Are you really okay?
I'm fine. Thank you for your concern.
I figured. My mother-in-law, having given birth to James and his brother, understood morning sickness more than I did. She knew the struggles and was concerned about me right from the get-go. If my mother-in-law was saying all that, I felt like I probably didn't need to come in the first place. But since I was already there, complaining to my husband now wouldn't help. Besides, the main focus was on the two people celebrating their 60th birthday, and I tried my best not to draw unnecessary attention. But it's pretty exhausting, both physically and mentally, to be on my guard all day. By the time we left, I think my fatigue was evident. I didn't want to inconvenience my driving husband, so I didn't sleep in the passenger seat, even though I wanted to. Why did you look so bored? Huh? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. My parents are there. You know you have to be more considerate, right? Yeah. I'm sorry. I do think I looked tired before we left his parents' place. My mother-in-law even said, "Sorry for keeping you up so late, especially being pregnant," when we were leaving. I understand that my husband might be upset about that, but I wish he'd be more considerate of how I'm feeling first. It's not like I complained, and even with the morning sickness, I tried my best all day to not let it show. Usually, if I can't handle the housework, I'd rest. Wouldn't a simple "were you okay" in the car have been nice? It's like I didn't endure or sacrifice anything. Why can't he understand my feelings more? Such feelings welled up inside me, but I thought anything I'd say to my husband now would just add fuel to the fire. Whether it's morning sickness or whatever, he only seemed to focus on the fact that I looked tired in front of his parents, and seemed oblivious to anything else. Then came a sermon from him, and after it seemed he was satisfied, he went silent. The 2-hour ride home was filled with an indescribable tension. By the time we got home, it was past 10 p.m., and I was completely drained. Of course, having driven such a long distance, he must have been even more tired than I was. But I was at my limit and immediately laid down on the couch. Just when I felt relieved, a wave of sleepiness hit me. I thought, if I fall asleep now, that won't be good. I need to at least change my clothes and get to the bedroom. As I was grappling with these thoughts, "Hey! There's no beer in the fridge." "What? Didn't you put any in after drinking last night? At least manage that much." "I'm gonna take a bath, so go buy some now." "What? Now? It's already past 10 p.m., and I've been exhausted all day from morning sickness. Asking me to go out and buy it now. That's just devilish, isn't it?" In other words, given how he's been pushing me, I've been feeling that he might not care about me as much as he did when we first got married, but I never imagined it would be to this extent. He was grumpy in the car too. I figured he'd get really mad if I refused, but I'm seriously at my limit. There's no way I'm walking to the convenience store to buy beer at this hour. Come on, that's just not possible. I'm exhausted, and I had a rough day with the morning sickness. I've told you this so many times. To me, that's just a bunch of irrelevant talk. I'm gonna take a bath now, so make sure you get it before I get out. If not, I'm seriously gonna be pissed. With that, my husband, looking at me with cold, accusing eyes, went straight to the bathroom without listening to anything I had to say. The look on my husband's face, glaring at me as if I were some sort of villain, made it clear he was dead serious. After he went to the bath, I let out a frustrated sigh and hit the couch hard with my fist. If I don't go now, I really don't know what'll happen next. This will be my last chore for the night. I'll finish shopping before he gets out of the bath and head straight to bed. With that in mind, I hurried to the convenience store, bought 3 beers, and rushed home. Luckily, my husband, who tends to take long baths, hadn't come out yet. After putting the beers in the fridge, I headed straight for the bedroom. As soon as I changed and lay down, I fell asleep as if I had passed out. I guess I was that tired, and I'm impressed I pushed myself this far. I really want to give myself a pat on the back. My husband, after enjoying his nightly drinks, must have slept in because he didn't wake up until midday the next day. Morning sickness was still bad, but it was somewhat better than the day before. Thinking I should get things done while I can, I managed to finish most of the house chores by mid-morning. As my belly grew larger, every task felt heavier, and the supportive husband I knew at the beginning of my pregnancy was nowhere to be seen. He used to be there for me, but now he just complains. I don't know what changed his attitude, but I've been doing my best every day so he won't complain, and both mentally and physically, I've been exhausted. Fast forward, and I'm now in my final month of pregnancy. Raising the child will surely be a challenge once they're born, but at least this tough pregnancy journey is coming to an end. Thinking that I'll finally meet our beloved baby soon, a sense of excitement was slowly building in my heart, different from the tough days I've been through. Welcome home. You're late, aren't you? Got some work stuff. What's for dinner tonight? Was thinking of having the pizza and burgers I got from Costco the other day. Seriously? Frozen food again. You making fun of me? I'm pregnant, and doing housework is all I can handle right now. If my husband helped with the regular chores, I could adjust my energy and time for cooking. But right now, it's impossible for me to do everything. He gets super angry if I don't do the chores, even though I have to cut down on cooking time. I wish he'd help out a bit if he's gonna complain. My husband, who's about to become a father soon, doesn't act like one at all. Wondering if this is really gonna work out, I decided to speak my mind because I've been holding back a lot. Look. It's impossible for me to do everything by myself. It'd be nice if you helped. When you have time, you're always out drinking or playing golf. You're hardly ever home. I'm about to give birth, so expecting me to be perfect is just unreasonable. Are you trying to go against me? I'm just stating the facts. I figured he'd definitely get mad at me for saying all that. But I was at my breaking point. I spoke my mind without holding back my emotions. After I finished speaking, I calmed down, bracing myself for the lecture I was sure my husband would give me. But shockingly, he just started fiddling with his phone without saying a word. Weird. Why isn't he yelling at me today? Earlier, I couldn't hold back and said something pretty harsh. Normally, my husband would have snapped back at me tenfold. Maybe the mention of being almost due made him realize his responsibility as a soon-to-be father for the first time. Well, anyway, I'm just glad nothing happened, and that night, we had frozen food for dinner. Because he came home late, we didn't finish dinner until around midnight. After taking a bath, it was past 1 a.m. when I was ready for bed. Hey, before you go to bed, can you check the mailbox? Now? At this hour? What's the big deal? It's just a small thing. Was he still upset about me serving frozen food for dinner, I wonder? Well, he hasn't been nagging me as he usually does, so I don't want to push it. And checking the mailbox will only take a minute. Doing as he asked, I went to the gate to check the mailbox. I did just as husband told me, heading to the front gate to check the contents of the mailbox. But there was nothing inside. I wonder what he wanted me to see. It was deep winter, and temperatures were well below freezing at night. Dressed in thin pajamas, I nearly froze as I hurried back towards the house. But, just as I reached for the doorknob, suddenly, there was a click from the inside, and the door was locked. What on earth? What's going on? Come on, let me in. It's below freezing, probably about as cold as inside a freezer, right? You seem to really love those frozen meals, so why not stay out here and freeze with them? What? No, wait! Hey! It seemed like husband had either gone to bed or was ignoring me. It was 2 a.m, and it would be impossible to stay out in this freezing cold until dawn. Besides, I was only planning to check the mailbox and head right back, so I'm really underdressed. I felt like I might freeze to death. My face and hands were burning from the cold, and my body was shivering uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. My thoughts were becoming foggy. I repeatedly pressed the doorbell, hoping husband would come to my aid, but there was no response from him. Was this his way of getting back at me for using frozen food? I hoped he'd let me in after a few minutes, so I kept calling out to him from outside. But time just went by, and there was no sign of husband. I was getting so cold that I was running out of energy. How much longer would I have to wait? Just as I was thinking this, I heard footsteps approaching from behind. What happened to you? What? I was taken aback by this unfamiliar man, but he appeared to be a bartender who worked at a nearby bar. Since he usually slept during the day, I'd never run into him before. It seems he closed up shop early that day and was returning home around 2 a.m. when he ran into me. What's going on? At the very least, let me get you something to wear. Though he was a stranger in the neighborhood, his gesture of offering his coat without inviting me into his home felt genuinely gentlemanly. It made me trust him, at least a little. He continued to listen to my story outside my house. Of course, normally I'd never share personal family matters with a stranger, but I was so emotionally overwhelmed at the moment, it wasn't the time to be concerned about that. I borrowed his cell phone and reached out to some folks I knew. I promised to repay him later and decided to spend the night at a business hotel. Once I reached the warm hotel room, a sense of relief washed over me, and I quickly drifted off to sleep. Before I knew it, morning had come. After checking out, I headed home. To my surprise, waiting at the gate were my in-laws. I expressed my gratitude for them coming so quickly after my call last night. But the moment I stepped onto the property, I was left speechless.
What? What on earth are you doing?
There was my husband, freezing, without any clothes on. Even in the morning, the temperature hadn't risen above 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Why wasn't he wearing anything? It made no sense. But what was even stranger was the glaring look my in-laws were giving him. Could it be? Did they do this? As these thoughts ran through my mind and I tried to grasp the situation. That foolish son of ours. I'm truly sorry. We came over right after it happened and disciplined this idiot. Discipline. I knew it. The whole situation was orchestrated by my in-laws. When the bartender helped me out, I immediately borrowed his phone to call my mother-in-law. I was so lucky that mother-in-law picked up quickly and that I remembered mother-in-law number. I honestly told mother-in-law everything that had happened with my husband and the recent incident. And there was another thing. I shared a shocking suspicion with mother-in-law that I had heard from the bartender. Thank you for all you've done. It's the least we could do. And, as you mentioned, the rumors of his affair turned out to be true. We had a spare key to your house, so we came in early this morning and confronted our foolish son. Checked his phone, and there was clear evidence of his affair. I knew it. I felt a pang of pity for my husband, abandoned outside in the cold without any clothes, but the moment I confirmed his infidelity, any sympathy I had for him vanished. I had never considered the possibility of his cheating before. The suspicion arose just yesterday. The bartender told me he had seen my husband downtown with a younger woman. Because of his line of work in an area with lots of nightclubs and bars, he had seen my husband with a young lady a few weeks ago. Before we were married, we used to have barbecues in our backyard quite often, so I believe he recognized us. When I first heard about it, I didn't have any solid proof, and I wanted to trust my husband, but if he had found someone new and stopped caring about me and stopped supporting me, especially while I'm pregnant, everything made sense. I had shared all of this with my in-laws over the phone, but to find out it was true, it's just disappointing.
If you're freezing, why don't you ask your beloved girlfriend to warm you up with her body warmth?
No, James looked as pale as a ghost, his lips turning a shade of purple. Considering the in-laws have been here for over 3 hours, he must have been left out in the cold for at least that long. Makes me wonder just how much he suffered. Well, he tried to do the same to me, so he's in no position to complain. He probably can't hold a proper conversation because the cold has numbed his mind. But honestly, I couldn't care less.
I think you know this, but I won't accept this. I'm gonna file for divorce. What?
He already looked pretty miserable from the cold, but at the mention of divorce, his face went even paler. I figured if he was treating me like this and having a good time with his mistress, she must be more important to him. Then again, maybe he's just scared of the potential alimony and child support. Either way, I doubt he ever loved me, and I don't have a shred of love left for him either.
I'm gonna sue your lover for emotional damage too, so you better be ready. Hold on, let's talk. There's nothing to talk about. I'll decide on the alimony and child support. You don't have a choice in this. Know your place.
Father-in-law chimed in with a firm tone, leaving husband speechless. Of course, he probably wants to get inside the house quickly to escape the freezing cold, but I think he's even more devastated about what's to come. But, he's only ever acted selfishly, so this is all a result of his own actions. He's probably gonna regret this for the rest of his life, and I hope he does. With those thoughts in mind, I decided to move back to my parents' place and leave husband for my in-laws to handle. I could tell just by looking at him that he was so frail he might need to go to the hospital. But he tried to do the same thing to me, so I have absolutely no reason to be concerned. After returning to my parents' home, I confessed everything to them. They told me it was okay to stay and raise my child there, for which I couldn't be more grateful. I decided I wanted to focus on giving birth first, so I asked my in-laws to wait until after the birth before confronting my husband. Being close to my due date, about 2 weeks after returning home, I gave birth to a big baby boy, weighing nearly 8 pounds. The moment he was born, he cried out loud, and I was so moved that I shed tears, feeling the reality of becoming a mother. For the next 3 months, I devoted myself to parenting at my parents' place. As I began to get used to life with a baby, I asked my mother-in-law and father-in-law to come visit us near my parents' home. Wow, what a healthy little boy. Congratulations on the birth. I'd always been treated well by my in-laws and, under the condition that husband wouldn't accompany them, I let them hold my son. The two of them, holding my son with smiles on their faces, looked like children themselves. I felt a pang of anger towards husband, thinking about how this should have been a happier celebration. But getting mad now seemed pointless. After spending some quality time with my son, my in-laws shifted the conversation back to my ex-husband and helped finalize discussions about alimony and child support. Thanks to their efforts over the past 3 months, the whole truth about my husband's affair came to light. We consulted a lawyer they knew, and it was decided he'd pay me the standard amount. Of course, I couldn't trust a husband who cheated, so he made a lump sum payment. He took out a loan to cover the alimony, but when it came to 20 years of child support, that was too much for him to handle, even with a loan. My in-laws graciously stepped in to help. With the divorce finalized, he's now just a stranger to me. Ex-husband's gonna pay my in-laws monthly for the child support they covered. From what I heard, it turned out that ex-husband hadn't even told his mistress he was married. She dumped him when she found out, leaving him all alone. He's now living with his parents and giving them 90% of his earnings to repay the debt. The remaining 10% barely covers his food, leaving him with no spending money. I'm not sure how long he'll continue this way, but with no savings and only the passing of time, once he's paid off his debt to his parents, it seems they might kick him out. Even when he's free from this financial hell, it seems he's got nothing but despair ahead of him. Well, he brought this upon himself, so I guess he's getting what he deserves. As for me, I'm living at my parents' house, doing my best to raise my child as a single mom. I'm still figuring out the ropes of parenthood, but my mom's been a great help, especially during those sleepless nights. It's made the whole experience mentally easier and enjoyable. I plan on relying on my parents for a while, and once my son starts elementary school, I think I'll get back to work. Plus, I still keep in touch with my in-laws and plan to visit them with my son a few times a year. While my ex-husband to ruin my life, I've got a precious new beginning with my baby, and I'm determined to lead a happy life from here on out. It all happened when we were sitting at the reception desk at our wedding. I've come here to get my compensation for the affair. Huh? Both John and I were literally dumbfounded. But what surprised me even more was the fact that John had indeed cheated. Damn! I thought I'd never get caught. And he was justifying it, making it impossible to have a proper conversation. Do you really think you have any appeal as a woman? I married you because you can cook well and you have a body that looks like it can bear healthy children. Stop kidding around! I had reached my limit and slapped John right across the face. Until now, no matter how rude John was, I had always got through it with a smile and a joke. But this time, I couldn't let it slide. I swore to myself that I wouldn't be satisfied until I had cornered him. On the long-awaited morning of our wedding, I was in the dressing room, wrapped in a pure white dress, secretly hoping that John would tell me, "Lily, you look beautiful." John had been high-spirited since the day before, genuinely looking forward to the wedding. I thought he would be pleased to see me looking different. In fact, I looked better than usual in the mirror, and both my parents and my in-laws praised me. I'm a bit on the chubby side and usually dress plainly. But today, I thought I should be allowed to enjoy being the star of the show. John and I are from the same university. When I was a freshman, he was a senior. I was a member of the broadcasting club, and that's how I met John, who was the captain of the sports team and a well-known figure on campus. Our relationship developed smoothly, and we submitted our marriage registration before our wedding, and we've been living together for the past 3 months. Living together made the wedding preparations more efficient. The wedding venue was about a 10-minute train ride from our house. It was a casual restaurant without any formality. The beautiful and stylish interior made it very popular for private parties. John entered the dressing room. I suppressed my excitement and asked, "Does the dress suit me?" Immediately, John broke into a wide smile and stroked my head. "You've still got a round belly, haven't you? Hope you'll give birth to a healthy baby." I was utterly dumbfounded. Even our parents frowned. "At least don't say that today." "Why?" "It's the truth. I even went on a diet to fit into this dress for the wedding, you know?" I forced a smile and patted my belly. In such moments, I feel bad inside, but I always try to brush it off with a joke. One of John's shortcomings is that once he gets too carried away, he can't stop himself. He was teasing and said, "Hey, your belly looks like a balloon." The bride is supposed to be the most beautiful woman on her wedding day. Stop it before you hurt Lily's feelings. John pretended not to know what he had done wrong, saying, "Well, a fat person is a fat person. I'm sorry for our son, he's always been childish. Even though you are younger, you are much more mature." There was no blame for my mother-in-law. "I don't mind. It's just his usual self." I flashed a grin and laid on the sarcasm as thick as I could. The two of us quickly pulled ourselves together and took our seats at the reception desk. We wanted a homey wedding and decided to greet the guests personally, bride and groom both. Sadly, most of my friends live on a distant island, where my parents' home is, so they couldn't make it. On the flip side, John had a lot of acquaintances attending. We were okay with the imbalance. My parents and I had made our peace with it. I saw this as a golden opportunity to meet many of John's friends and was actually looking forward to the greetings. John introduced each guest to me, one by one. Every single one of them seemed delighted to meet me, complimenting me with a "You look like a beautiful bride." There was one guest, in particular, that stood out, a woman named Natasha. She was an acquaintance from work, as I understood. She seemed to be in her 40s, but she had this actress-like aura, especially in her dress and her tall, slender figure. "Nice to meet you, Lily. I've always been under John's care," she greeted me. "Oh, is that so?" I was certainly overwhelmed by Natasha. "He's a looker, right? And she's got her stuff together at work. Quite a different story from someone else I know." She indeed had the aura of someone who's competent at her job. Her designer suit fitted her perfectly without being too flashy, and her makeup was flawless. John was looking at Natasha with a kind of admiration in his eyes that he never showed to me, and Natasha was gracefully accepting his attention. They exchanged words for quite a while. Right now, I'm a full-time housewife. But originally, I left my job because of John's wishes. He insisted that he wanted me to focus on our home. I had only been at my job for 2 years. Just when things were starting to get interesting, I felt pressured to resign. When I think about the unfinished business at my old job, I still feel a tug at my heartstrings. Looking at Natasha, who seemed so dazzling, made these feelings even stronger. This is wrong. Today's supposed to be about us. Our guests should leave having had a good time. I swallowed the anger rising inside me due to John's insensitive remark and kept up with the greetings. Then, a middle-aged man in a suit appeared. He had this impressive demeanor, almost like a distinguished actor. "Who's that gentleman over there?" I looked at John, but he seemed to be as clueless as I was. Maybe he wandered in by mistake. It's supposed to be a private event. Just as I was wondering how to handle this situation, the man spoke up. "I'm here to discuss the compensation for an affair." "Excuse me?" John and I were literally stunned. "I'm in this line of work." The man handed out his business card with a professional demeanor. It bore the name of a well-known company, and his job title was impressive. He was dressed in an expensive suit, and he carried himself with calm and composure. He didn't seem like he was making things up. "Are you John? Could you please break it off with my wife?" "Wait a minute, John and I are getting married today." I tried to calm the man down, but then I noticed John trembling beside me. "What are you talking about?" John managed to squeeze out those words, though his voice was clearly strained. "My wife should be here somewhere." "Don't play dumb, it won't get you anywhere."
Wait. Natasha and I aren't like that."
"Well, you've just admitted it yourself, haven't you? So, you're having an affair with my wife, Natasha, right?" I couldn't hide my shock.
"Natasha, you mean the woman we just greeted?"
"I believe so." "What did he say about Natasha?" "I heard it was work-related."
"Actually, Natasha doesn't work."
The man sighed deeply. "Let's change the place. Can we use the green room?" I asked my parents to handle the reception, and went ahead to the green room. The man, who introduced himself as Kyle, sat down on the sofa in the green room and started talking. It's a blatant lie that Natasha has anything work-related to do with John. I found out through her phone records that she met John on a dating site. My in-laws, who were already in the green room, exclaimed in surprise.
"We didn't know anything about this." "Don't make strange accusations, we could sue you for defamation."
But Kyle remained calm. "It seems that Natasha has been having an affair with John for 2 years. This time, I couldn't help raising my voice.
2 years ago. But we've been dating since our college days, isn't this some kind of mistake?"
The phone records show it clearly. "Actually, I've been very busy with work for the last few years, with lots of business trips and overtime. It seems that Natasha had the affair when I wasn't looking." Saying this, Kyle took an envelope out of his bag. Inside were printed screenshots of Natasha's smartphone and a couple of photos of her with John.
"This is definitely John in these photos, isn't it?"
My parents gathered around, and we all checked the photos. I've been away from home a lot, I can't say I was blameless. But does that justify an affair? My parents muttered in unison, "No, it doesn't." More than anything, Kyle's demeanor was incredibly convincing. From a certain point, Natasha started wearing a new wristwatch. It was a very nice design, so I looked it up and found out it was part of a pair. I wondered who had the other one, and that's when my investigation began. Kyle had been investigating Natasha's actions during his breaks at work, and discovered that she frequently visited a certain station. It turned out to be the station closest to John's company. They were frequently meeting up after John finished work. Kyle then took out several photos from the envelope that appeared to be taken secretly. They clearly showed John and Natasha getting cozy in a bustling district.
"You find it fun stalking like this? Don't take your frustrations out on me just because you can't keep your wife happy."
John's words were bold, but his voice was clearly trembling. "The serial number on my wife's wristwatch is 118. What about your wristwatch?" My parents restrained Kyle. I took off John's wristwatch and looked at the back of the dial. It's 118. This is a unique number in the world, right? Is it just a coincidence? How could that be? The evidence is all here. Why don't you just admit it and tell the truth? Suddenly, John raised his voice and started kicking the chairs in the green room.
Damn it! I thought I'd never get caught.
John, is what this man is saying true? Without looking at us, John answered while fiddling with his smartphone. There's just one thing that's different. I really do love Natasha. My in-laws whispered to each other in a confused tone. Today, I invited her because Natasha said she wanted to see Lily. At that moment, there was a knock on the green room door. Natasha came in from the guest room. Apparently, John had called her with his smartphone. John, you really do love me, don't you? Of course. My feelings are all for you, Natasha. Natasha and John hugged each other without any hesitation. This time, I couldn't just laugh it off as a joke. I carefully chose my words and asked John. Is it true that you've been cheating? Since Natasha got married, I reluctantly decided to marry you. We met a bit too late, didn't we? If I had met John sooner, I would have married him instead of ending up with such an uncool person. Kyle straightened up from the sofa and said with a resolute attitude. See, they're so selfish, aren't they? I'm thinking about divorcing my wife. But I'm definitely going to demand a proper compensation for it. At the word alimony, John and Natasha momentarily flinched. John, did you know that Natasha was married when you started dating her? Yeah, I found out a while after we met. But by then, we were already serious about each other. So, you were cheating on me too, weren't you? Unexpectedly, John shook his head. This isn't cheating. Because I have no feelings for you. Then why were you dating me? You were just for housekeeping. What does just for housekeeping mean? According to John, Natasha was his true love, but he needed someone to take care of the household and he wanted children, so he decided to marry me. It seemed he also judged that it would be a good cover to get married around this time for the company and society. Do you really think you're attractive as a woman? I married you because you could cook a little and you seemed like you could bear strong children. I've had enough. I reached my limit and slapped John. It was the first time I had ever hit someone. My right hand was tingling. At the same time, I felt disgusted, as if I had touched something filthy. Immediately, Kyle pulled out a wet wipe from his bag and handed it to me. Gratefully, I took it and wiped my hands thoroughly. Ow! What the hell are you doing? You think you're in a position to defy me? Even my mother-in-law couldn't stay silent at his words. Have you always talked to Lily like that? No, Mom, I just lost my temper for a moment. Hey, Lily. I got scolded because of you. It's your fault. There's no way that's true. Is it really true that you've been cheating for the past 2 years? John snorted triumphantly. You can't trust what this guy says. Besides, the photos might be fake. But judging from your interactions, it seems like you two really are dating, aren't you? That doesn't prove anything. What, do you have a video or something? I cut into the conversation with my usual surprised tone. I have it on video. What? Actually, I had secretly recorded today's situation in the dressing room with a hidden camera, planning to show it as a surprise later. I took out the camera from behind the flower arrangement in the room and checked the footage. From the part where John called me fat to where Kyle confronted him about the affair, everything was recorded. Unexpectedly turning into big news. But it should be sufficient evidence of the affair. Well done, Lily. And as for this guy. Lily, I am truly sorry. My in-laws both apologized to me together. You don't need to apologize. No, it's also our fault for spoiling John and letting him become like this. What can we do to make it up to you? John, you should apologize too. No way. I haven't done anything wrong. Loving someone is a good thing, right? That's what Mom taught me. That's not what I meant. Stop talking back and apologize to Lily right now. It's okay. The foolish one here is John. John, Natasha, how about making a cheating confession in front of the camera? Say cheese. I grinned and pointed the camera at them. I didn't expect to have this side of me. Hey, don't make that face. Just joke around and reply like you always do. This is my way of joking around. I can't overlook this. Then should we cancel the wedding? You're the one who's going to be embarrassed. I was at a loss for words. The party's start time had already passed. The guests must be waiting for our entrance at the venue. No, I should stick to my own decision. Fortunately, I had invited only a few guests. And they were all trusted close friends, so I could make up for it later. The one who really deserves pity here is John. He cares about appearances, so he invited his bosses from work and even his mentors from his college days. All right, I've got it. Let's start the wedding ceremony. However, just to let you know, we are going to change the flow a bit. I went out to the venue and took the microphone from the MC. John followed behind me. There was a round of applause from the audience. Thank you all for gathering here today. We were supposed to hold a wedding ceremony, but today's event has been changed to an emergency press conference. The venue suddenly became noisy with whispers and murmurs. With clear and articulate pronunciation, as if I had been trained in broadcasting, I continued. Today, we have a guest named Natasha, who is an acquaintance of John through work. But in reality, well, John? I turned the microphone towards John, like an interviewer. The people in the venue looked puzzled. John hesitated to speak, so I pressed him further. What is your real relationship with her? Voices from the audience also started to chime in, urging him to spill the beans already. Still, John seemed determined to remain silent. If this weren't in front of so many people, I would probably have been slapped hard. His fists were trembling under the table. No choice then. This was supposed to be a surprise for today, but please take a look at the hidden camera footage in the backstage. Everyone, please feel free to enjoy your drinks and meals. The large screen on the stage showed everything that had happened earlier, without missing a beat. As the video played, the audience watched intently, and gradually, voices of discontent started to rise. What's going on here? This is ridiculous. From the crowd, someone asked, you two are already living together, aren't you? We met in college, registered our marriage 3 months ago, and have been living together since, leading up to today. The venue was in an uproar. I thought I was marrying John out of love, but it seems I was utterly deceived. I adjusted my life for him, even quitting my job. What has my life been all about? I could hear John clicking his tongue in frustration. A different guest asked, Lily, what do you want to do now? The atmosphere had completely turned into that of a press conference. To be honest, this is all so sudden, I haven't had time to think it through. But I have my parents and trustworthy friends. I plan to figure things out together with them. This response led to a series of repeated questions from the crowd. John kept his head down, acting as if this had nothing to do with him. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you must have a lot of things you want to say, so I will leave the stage to him. You can grill him as much as you want. I put down the microphone and moved to the entrance of the venue, watching the scene unfold. John was left alone on the stage. Some young men in the audience, their tempers flaring, stood up and approached John, some even throwing drinks and food at him. All right, I get it. I was dating Natasha. Lily just wasn't enough for me. At that moment, my mother-in-law appeared, took the microphone, and addressed everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my foolish son. If it's not too much trouble, please feel free to give him a piece of your mind. At her signal, people swarmed the stage and surrounded John. I couldn't see John anymore, but I imagined he was getting what he deserved. I thought about how expensive his rental suit was. Concerned about appearances, John had rented the best suit. With this commotion, he would surely have to pay for it. Satisfied after witnessing the chorus of boos from the audience, I returned to the backstage, quickly changed out of my dress, and left the rest to my parents. I also asked them to make sure John couldn't run away from the venue. I wanted to go home immediately. Ever since we started living together, John had been extremely opposed to me entering his room. He would get angry even if I tried to enter for cleaning or searching for something. I suspected there might be some evidence of his infidelity in his room. I asked Kyle to come with me, and we left the venue, heading for home. I was grateful that we had chosen a wedding venue close to our home. Soon we arrived at our house, and the search of John's room began. And then, one thing after another started to come out. Pictures of Natasha, and what seemed to be matching accessories and a pair of watches warranty card, and letters from Natasha, were all revealed. It even came to light that he was traveling with Natasha under the guise of business trips. Kyle meticulously photographed each of these items, and I put them in a cardboard box. It was almost like a police house search. Once all the evidence was gathered, I video called my mother-in-law. "Hi, how's everything going over there?" Bravely, she responded as if nothing was unusual. "The guests are getting heated, and John is still being cornered by everyone." "That's good to hear. Can you put your phone near the microphone so that my voice can be heard in the venue?" She quickly understood what I meant and did as I asked. "Hello, can you hear me? I'm the bride who was supposed to be the star today." I could sense the murmuring in the venue quieting down. "I know some of you might be angry. I have an important announcement to make." The venue went silent. "I will be divorcing John. Unfortunately, today's wedding turned out to be a disaster, but feel free to eat and drink as much as you like, and go home whenever you're ready. The cost will be fully charged to John."
Wait. I wasn't informed about this.
Kyle, who was standing next to me, signaled for me to pass the phone to him. "While we're on the subject, I have an announcement too. I'm also divorcing Natasha." The crowd murmured in surprise. "John, Natasha is an expensive woman. She doesn't do any housework, shops every week, and is absolutely incompetent at work. But now, both of you are free, so please, live happily ever after."
What am I supposed to do now?
"You're free to do as you please. Good luck supporting Natasha's lifestyle."
I can't afford to support Natasha's lifestyle.
Natasha, who was nearby, cut in.
I'm not comfortable marrying John either.
"Then you're all alone. Good riddance. Don't bother coming back home from today onwards." A round of applause erupted in the venue. Drunk guests' voices could be heard saying, "Good for her," and other cheers. Reluctantly, my mother-in-law agreed to let John stay at her house for a while. Warm messages like "It must have been tough, but you did well. We support you," started arriving on my phone from close friends who were at the venue. Afterwards, the guests reportedly indulged in a grand feast and drinks, and even made sure to take their wedding favors home with them before leaving. A few days after the tumultuous wedding, I was returning to my condo after shopping when I found John standing in front of my door, holding a disproportionately large bouquet of flowers. "I came to apologize, hoping you would forgive me. Can I come in?" "No." "Come on, don't be so stubborn. The wedding was just a moment of confusion, right?"
Absolutely not.
John, for some reason, had a smug smile on his face. He tried to hand me the huge bouquet of roses. "All women love flowers, right? Cheer up." But I had shopping bags in both hands and couldn't possibly accept the flowers. Not that I wanted to, even if my hands were free.
I'm sick of your assumptions and lack of consideration. Just go home.
John slowly moved closer to me. I felt threatened and turned my back on him to call my mother-in-law. The back and forth with John continued, and when he tried to force his way into the house with a spare key, my mother-in-law arrived just in time.
What the hell are you doing?
A shout from my usually refined mother-in-law, which I had never heard before, echoed throughout the area. "Mom, why are you here?" "I came here thinking of making amends with Lily."
Don't talk nonsense and just disappear. Do not show your face in front of us ever again.
With that, my mother-in-law snatched John's bouquet and hit him square in the face with it. John's face was covered in small cuts from the rose thorns, and torn petals and leaves were scattered all over his body, making for a truly pitiful sight.
If you make any more strange moves, I'm calling the police. And don't you even think about coming back to our house.
He seemed genuinely scared by her words. John left with his tail between his legs.
I'm really sorry about this. Actually, I declared yesterday that I was severing parental ties with him. He left the house, but I never imagined he would be here.
While efficiently cleaning up the remains of the bouquet scattered on the floor, my mother-in-law apologized to me over and over again. You don't have to apologize. Please come in and have some tea.
No, I'm going to excuse myself now. If he comes near you again, don't hesitate to contact me. I will protect you, no matter what.
I was on the verge of tears from her words. I had an ally on my side. I decided to rely on her in times of trouble, and with that, we said our goodbyes. Later on, I managed to finalize the divorce, and I was relieved. I and Kyle each demanded $30,000 in damages from John. I didn't forget to claim the full $20,000 for the wedding expenses, including the gifts for the guests. The guests seemed to have enjoyed themselves quite a bit, and I couldn't help but laugh when I saw the hefty bill. John, unable to cover the costs with his salary alone, had moved to a cheap, small one-room apartment and was working tirelessly day and night. His boss had attended the wedding, which resulted in him losing face at work as well, but he couldn't afford to quit his job because he needed to make ends meet. Now, it seems like he's living every day in a very uncomfortable and awkward position. I heard from my mother-in-law that right after that incident, Natasha broke up with him. Apparently, Natasha had met another man through an online dating site and decided to date him instead. I can hardly imagine that things will go well for them. Especially since Natasha also has to pay us damages. I moved to a smaller, but nicer apartment. Moving was a hassle, but I decided it was risky to let John know where I lived. The evidence of John's affair is packed in a large cardboard box, sitting in a corner of my new home. So far, the alimony has been paid on time, but I haven't touched the money at all. Thanks to that, my savings have increased significantly. In the midst of all the commotion, a strange kind of fortune befell me. I lost about 15 pounds due to the stress of the divorce. Every time I looked in the mirror, I felt like I had been reborn. I went back to work, and through business contacts, I was able to meet a wonderful man. We are still dating, and every day is fulfilling. I have a good feeling that things will work out with my new partner this time.